What's going on, people? I am Dukedobbins, FTW, and as you know, I like to talk shit about video games. Now, this has upset a great many people. Lately, my social media has been inundated by cucks, betas, wannabes, and incels, furious that I say mean things about the games they like. Even Cliff Bleszinski, head dev for Lawbreakers, joined in on the pileup, blaming toxic YouTubers like me for his monumental failures. Which is ironic because his studio had offered to fly me to North Carolina to hype his game. I declined because the game looked boring and fuck North Carolina. But I was so flattered by the offer, I never went after Lawbreakers. I suppose I'll have to remedy that sometime in the future. This is, of course, a popular meme among plenty of other devs and fans, that in the age of loot box gambling, pay to win, and false advertising, me and Yang Ya are the real problem with gaming. But these people are all morons. The truth is, this industry needs more toxic YouTube channels like mine, because there's presently an industrial hype complex that is actively misleading consumers about what they'll get for their money and shielding developers from accountability for their mistakes and deceptive practices. And there's no better example of that than Destiny 2. In the top comments and Twitter replies of many of the posts criticizing me, you'll see people say something like this, and I quote, "Sorry, but Dukedobbins was right from the start, and if I'd listened to him, I might not have pre-ordered Destiny 2 in the season pass and saved myself a lot of trouble and heartache." I hear regretful tales like this very often on my own channel. Hundreds of comments, many with hundreds of thumbs up, saying things like, "Still want a refund, locked into season pass and have already uninstalled D2, total con." That's someone who feels cheated out of $100, which should be more outrageous than me being a shit talker, especially because it's about to happen again. As you may have heard, Bungie recently announced their $40 fall expansion, Forsaken, alongside a $30 annual pass, and as usual, every gaming media outlet on the web has dutifully spread the word, posting the trailer, sharing the announcement, and listing the details almost verbatim as they were described by the devs. These articles are little more than free advertising, delivering Bungie's pitch to an exponentially larger audience without ever critically examining the merits, what not one of these major media outlets has done, while Bungie is already asking millions of people to pay $40 to $70 right now, is ask, will it be worth it? Does Bungie's track record justify the price tag? It's an important question to ask. In a world where nearly half of us are unable to afford basic things like rent and cell phones, every dime counts. And I worry that we're about to repeat the same cycle of mistakes we've seen with Destiny coverage since day one. For a clear example of what I'm talking about, look no further than the recent debacle that was Warmind hype. Then, as now, most media outlets copy and pasted Bungie's marketing, trailers, talking points. What none of them ever mentioned was that Bungie's previous $20 expansion, Curse of Osiris, consistently saw 6 out of 10 reviews and was widely panned by players as an obviously rushed, incoherent mess with very little actual new content. Warmind coverage also neglected to mention that Destiny 2 itself has had its playlist populations decimated because most people are super bored of it. I'm not saying every outlet needs to go ham on Bungie the way I do, but it seems irresponsible not to at least include one paragraph mentioning the masses of players who feel burned by previous Destiny purchases when you're showing your audience something new to purchase from Destiny. Don't get me wrong, these outlets aren't shy about criticizing Destiny after people have bought it. I remember reading an article in The Verge critical of Destiny where the writer readily admits that, and I quote, "When I reviewed Destiny 2 in September, I said it was everything fans have been asking for. I sincerely believe that." Discussing Destiny 2's flaws, the writer mentions that we just couldn't see it in the lead up to or even launch. In fact, every outlet that has since published criticism of Destiny 2 actually gave it pretty good reviews on release. The same can be said for all these YouTubers and streamers. If only I had $1 for every thumbnail I've seen that has some version of "I was wrong about Destiny 2." And I just don't buy that it was too hard to tell how hollow the shit was from the start. Not to toot my own horn, but everything people have been upset about with Destiny 2 this year, I warned about 3 days after release. So did Angry Joe, I Hate Everything, and a number of other YouTubers, all of whom, by the way, are often regarded as toxic or hate milkers like me. But it's not just the media, it's the grassroots gaming communities that form around these games, the streamers, YouTubers, fan sites, and forum fanboys that hype and spin aggressively enough to make a 6 out of 10 game the second best-selling title of 2017. Game devs are obviously aware of how effective these influencers can be. They're actually the ones who started referring to them as influencers, after all, and they work hard to keep them happy and motivated with gifts. Back in the day, Activision gave its COD influencers, free games, free consoles, free trips, free in-game currency, etc., etc. My ass got the $100 Titanfall crate with free games, a helmet, a USB, and a t-shirt and shit. I was supposed to do giveaways, but I'm not about it, so it's all just sitting in my closet. But if I didn't tell you about it, there's no way you would know about the gifts they were sending me behind the scenes, is there? And that was a smallish studio buttering up a very small YouTuber. I shudder to think about how significant some of the patronage relationships between larger studios and influencers might be. But anyways, in the lead up to Warmind, players and even influencers were generally dissatisfied with Destiny and skeptical about the future. So Bungie pulled a clever stunt to reactivate the industrial hype complex by giving every influencer a free trip down to the studio, supposedly supposedly to help Bungie fix the game, but in reality it was about hyping it. It's never been clear to me what exactly these guys had to offer Bungie besides publicity. Every studio spends hefty sums on actual professional playtesters and focus groups to assess their game. Further, plenty of studios like Epic Games put stuff in, take stuff out, and otherwise adjust their game rapidly and successfully just based on feedback from Reddit. Destiny 2's problems aren't some big secret, they're plastered all over the forums and YouTube. And what's even the point to being a game developer if you need a bunch of people with zero experience in the field to tell you how to do your job? Only time will tell if these influencers were able to contribute substantively to Destiny's development. If in the near future this game completely turns itself around, then hey, thanks Dado for pimping my ride. But I have a funny feeling that's not how it's gonna go down, because I know this cycle pretty well by now. What the summit did accomplish was to completely change the tone of Destiny 2 coverage and online discussion, from that of general dissatisfaction to misguided enthusiasm about the future. These influencers had signed non-disclosure agreements barring them from talking about their time. Except they were allowed to start hyping new game modes. They were allowed to tell us they had fixed stuff, i.e. don't worry, the summit's working. They even started hyping shit that wasn't true in a stream that has since been deleted. Goliathon declared in front of thousands of viewers that Deej had told him the majority of Bungie had been rerouted from Destiny 3 to fix Destiny 2. Overexcited fanboys parroted this on Reddit, where it got to the top of the page with 2,000 upvotes and was undoubtedly seen by thousands of more players. Unfortunately, it wasn't true, which Goliathon had to clarify the next day, essentially saying, "Sorry everybody, I fanboyed too hard and accidentally made some shit up." In reality, not only is Bungie working on Destiny 3, but they've also undoubtedly dedicated significant staff and resources to working on their entirely new $100 million IP they are set to release in China, working with Tencent, major Chinese publisher. Jason Schreier reports that title has been in development for some time, so it's easy to imagine why Bungie delivers Destiny 2 patches and updates at such a slow pace. Schreier, who has done excellent and credible behind-the-scenes reporting on Destiny in the past and who has yet to have any of his reporting denied by Bungie, has also speculated that Bungie may be getting ready to sell the Destiny IP back to Activision and abandon it altogether. Not exactly a huge sign of confidence, especially since Bungie's name recognition is really the only thing that's sold this shitty cash grab for so long. Forsaken may actually be a very fitting way to describe Destiny's future. Anyway, it turns out more people saw that false statement on stream and Reddit than saw the tweet correcting it a day later, because even to this day you'll find many players who genuinely believe what Goliathon said to be true. This all had the intended effect. In the lead up to Warmind, players were convinced that Bungie was listening and the game was getting fixed. The forums were overwhelmingly optimistic about the future. This all had the intended effect. In the lead up to Warmind, players were convinced that Bungie was listening, that the game was getting fixed, and the forums were overwhelmingly optimistic about the future. And then, Warmind actually released. Warmind's reception is perhaps no better illustrated than by the front page of Bungie's own forums the day of release. Incredulous Guardians posted top threads with titles like, "Can we get a better narrative team?" "Warmind totally underwhelming. Is that it? Seriously?" And, most succinctly, "This has been a complete letdown." Reviewers consistently gave Warmind 6 out of 10 scores, criticizing it for a severe lack of content, an abrupt, rushed-feeling story, and relying too much on reskinned or reused assets we've seen since Destiny 1. The Hive have been reskinned to look icy, the first and last mini-boss is that same ogre thing. Much of the Mars terrain and architecture looks as it did in D1, but with icicles. If these complaints sound familiar, it's because they are. These are the criticisms people have had for most of Destiny's past DLC, because just like much of that previous DLC, Warmind has obviously cut content from Destiny 1. In an explosive article never denied by Bungie, Schreier reported that a massive area on Mars involving Rasputin and secret bunkers had been cut from Destiny to be used for Destiny 2. Common sense tells us this was likely it. This would explain the reused assets. It would explain the abrupt, shallow story. Many players found it strange and anticlimactic how quickly you slay this worm god boss in only minutes after meeting him the first time. The story has zero impact or relevance to the rest of Destiny 2, which are exactly the things that I warned about in my last video would be the case if this was cut content. Go back and watch it if you have to. Further, players thought it was strange that some of the characters you had met in Destiny 1 don't seem to recognize you this time around. Almost as if they weren't developed after you had met them in D1, but before. They also reused 2 of the story missions as strikes, so it was a bit misleading and douchey to list those as separate pieces of content in the marketing. How unusual for them to do that. Because, again, this is essentially the exact same stuff we've criticized Curse of Osiris, House of Wolves, Dark Below, Destiny, and Destiny 2 for. It's a pattern that hasn't changed that much in the last few years, particularly with these $15 to $20 expansions, which always get 6 out of 10 scores, and yet that never gets brought up, or even mentioned by anyone when Bungie starts hyping the next piece of DLC. It's really weird. Instead, they're busy publishing articles like this hard-hitting piece from Kotaku discussing Warmind post-release titled, "I love to complain about Destiny 2 while I play Destiny 2, that has such valuable insights as, After hundreds of hours of exploring planets and killing everything in sight, things like the light double click of the jump button to glide while sprinting as my warlock feel both comfortingly familiar and still almost as good as the first time I did them. Or, I'm always looking for a reason to play more of it. Secretly, it's all I want to do. If Bungie rolled out new expansions every month, I might never play anything else. Ultimately, all of the hate comes from a deep place of unconditional love. So remember, all the criticism you see is from people who secretly like it, so you should still buy it. This blowjob of an article is of course nothing compared to the literally dozens of channels that exist solely to hype Destiny literally every day of the week. But remember, the real problem here is that too many people are criticizing Destiny. And or other games that benefit from the same systemic bias. The industrial hype complex is already revving up for Forsaken. Many articles that repeat nearly verbatim what the devs said in their stream, but for people who don't care enough to watch. Entire articles dedicated to fan theories, and of course the usual, 4 years and $300 later, the franchise is finally saved headlines. Forum threads and YouTube videos rooting for this billion-dollar franchise as if it were some underdog sports star political candidate. What you won't see is any mention of the 6 out of 10 reviews that Destiny's last 2 expansions got, or the 6 out of 10 reviews that Destiny 2 got from the likes of me, Angry Joe, etc., which were ignored, only to be viewed as prescient a few months after everyone ponied up their $60. You also won't see any mention of the 6 out of 10 reviews Destiny 1 DLC got, or the 6 out of 10 reviews that Destiny 1 itself got. Channels like mine exist to advise you that it's probably a good idea to wait at least a few weeks until after Forsaken's release to buy it, because most reviewers are morons who gave Destiny 2 good reviews only to turn around later and admit that it's trash with no endgame and Destiny 1 was better. Generally, these writers and YouTubers, what they do is they follow public opinion, right? Hype it while everyone's hyped, start talking shit about it once people stop liking it. You gotta give me that. I was consistent. From the beta, I was like, fuck this game. I'm here to warn you that the season pass is definitely not worth $30. New endgame activities, rewards, seasonal rewards, and triumphs, they left it as vague as possible because they're deceptive pricks and want you to think new endgame activities will include raids and strikes, but it won't. If it was going to include that kind of shit, they would have said so because it will sell a lot more. We know it's not going to have story missions or cutscenes. They were clear about that on the stream, saying instead they would tell stories through gameplay. Whoop-de-fucking-do. Their stories with cutscenes are so great. I can't wait to see what they can do without them. And other than that, they found a few different ways to say more in-game items, i.e. a bunch of Eververse stuff, except you gotta buy all of it right now. Also worth mentioning, one of the community's biggest ongoing complaints is how often Bungie reskins emblems and weapons and gear from the past. Sometimes they don't even reskin it, they just rename it. Hard to believe they're not gonna do that here. But it'll still be one of the best-selling titles of the year, and about 3 months after it's out, the fans, writers, and YouTubers who are hyping it right now can start bitching about what a letdown it was. And in the meantime, everyone can run their fucking mouth about me on Twitter, because remember, you're allowed to dedicate your entire channel to hyping one game. Nobody will give you shit for that. What you're not allowed to do is talk shit about games. That's a big no-no. Please remember to rate. This is Batman, signing out.